Mimicry. The act, practice, or art of closely copying, imitating, or resembling another person, organism, or object. The symbol of avarice. A monstrous head resembling a treasure chest, once an ancient god, a symbol of shame imposed upon a long-lost clan. Dark Souls is notorious for being one of the hardest games out there, filled with the most unforgettable bosses. But it's also home to a massive variety of weapons, spells, armors, and items. Hello everyone, my name is Wailed, and today I'll be pushing these items to their limits, as I set out to mimic each and every boss. The rules are simple. I'm recreating each boss using only what I believe to be necessary and available to me. This being weapons, spells, items, and even armor sets that look like the boss. For example, if I need an item from the DLC to fight a boss, then I cannot fight said boss till I have all the items I require. Yes, this will get a little weird, and the order I defeat the bosses will traumatize most people. To clarify, I am not using New Game Plus or any tailcut weapons against the bosses that drop them. I will only be mimicking the bosses, as in they have a big health bar at the bottom of the screen. So if there's a health bar, there is a mimic. With all this out of the way, join me as I march back and forth across Lordran, mimicking these bosses. Alright, our first target of course being the Asylum Demon. We have very limited supplies out here in the Asylum, so I've chosen the Deprived as our starting class due to it wielding a club, which is classified as a hammer. The Asylum Demon wields the Demon Great Hammer, which is obviously a great hammer. So with our naked player and his hammer, we have our first mimic completed. Trust me, this will get a lot more exciting as we go. So let's quickly leave the Asylum and make our way to the next boss. Alright, the Tauros Demon is a very straightforward boss to mimic, but we'll definitely get our steps in, so hang on tight. Some of you may be familiar with where this is going. First, we make our way through New Londo with the Master Key as our starting gift, allowing me to gain access to the Undead Parish in Darkroot Garden, where I would like to mention this is the only glitch I'll be using throughout our journey, the Soul Dupe. This glitch allows me to duplicate souls. That way, I'm not grinding for hours to get any items or stat level ups needed to wield the weapons and spells in this run. And to anyone complaining, let's say you grind out all these items in a 7-year-old remake. Plus, my vigor won't go above 25, if that helps appease any of you. All this being said, I can now buy the Crest of Artorias and make my way far deeper into the Darkroot Forest. I run past these tree huggers and join their covenant. Here, I can talk to this NPC, Shiva of the East, who is a key component in all of this. After chatting, I can now run all the way back towards New Londo and turn left to enter Blighttown early. After you enter, you'll find that your chat with Shiva causes him to move down here under this water wheel, where he is now a vendor of weapons. And while he sells a lot of things we'll need later, right now we just need the Demon's Great Axe, the very weapon used by the Tauros Demon. When it comes to armor, we'll only need a helm, and a lot of luck on our side. We need to defeat the Armored Boar in the Undead Parish, and hope it drops the Fang Boar Helm, which only has a 25% chance of dropping. Well, I'm not winning the lottery anytime soon. But don't worry, if it doesn't drop now, we can always grab the helm later. With all that sorted out, we're finally ready to take on the Tauros Demon, and it's very easygoing. He doesn't do anything crazy, due to it being a beginner boss, and me not wearing any armor makes my dodge rolls easier. Also, I'll be rating my experiences with mimicking and fighting each boss. So first off, I give him a 7 out of 10. It's a fun journey to set up everything with simple execution. Now we make our way to the Undead Chapel to mimic the Bell Gargoyle. While I myself can't become a gargoyle, I can at least get their loadout. That being a halberd, with one located outside the church, and a railed shield, such as the warrior's round shield. Now for armor, there isn't a lot available to make me look like a gargoyle, but I've found that the undead soldiers can drop parts of the boulder set, and when I mix it with a chainmail set from the male undead merchant, I can give you what I would call the Bell Gargoyle, with a bulky enough appearance like the one we're about to fight. Welp, that's a problem, because that there is 2 health bars. To remedy this, I head back towards the Tauros Demon's Bridge, and speak with everyone's favorite knight, Solaire. He provides me with a white sign soapstone, which allows me to summon a second mimic for the fight. 1 mimic per health bar. This second mimic, who I shall refer to as Mimic 2, is tasked with playing the role of the second, weaker gargoyle. Mimic 2 is outfitted with the Thief and Hollow Thief sets. Equipped with a halberd and pyromancy flame, Mimic 2 uses the spell Fire Surge to replicate the second gargoyle's fire breath attack. Together, we now properly mirror both Bell gargoyles. And as for the fight, I'll be honest, I wish I played it differently. The Bell gargoyles fall apart the moment you tag team them with 2 people. And with me in Mimic 2 jumping them both on sight, it doesn't really go well. It's not very entertaining, sadly. So I give this a 5 out of 10. Fun using the halberds, but the gargoyles fall apart instantly. If anything, I'll be taking note of this for when I mimic the bosses of Dark Souls 2 and 3. Let's carry on, shall we? With the first bell of Awakening rung, we head down to the lower levels of Undead Burg to face off against the only demon who lives in an area the size of my closet, the Capra Demon. For armor, all we need is the Hollow Soldier waistcloth and the Gargoyle Helm as its horns. For weapons, we once again chat with Shiva of the East and purchase 2 Demon Great Machetes, 1 for each hand, just as the demon itself does. And with that, we're ready to go. It's pretty fast to set up, truthfully. As for the fight, I give it a 5 out of 10. I mean, it's still the Capra Demon fight, and now I'm just swinging 2 big swords that bounce off of all the surfaces. The only thing helping me is the abuse of the elevation, which makes the fight easier, as usual. Yeah, let's just move on. Okay, for anyone wondering, I'll eventually circle back to the Gaping Dragon, but for now, I'll be approaching the second bell and mimicking Chaos Witch Quelaag. First up, let's cover weapons and spells. First, I purchase a scimitar from the undead male merchant, and then buy out all the charcoal pine resin from the female undead merchant to mimic the flaming curved sword she wields. Now I could use fire or chaos infusion, but I felt the pine resin led to a more accurate portrayal with the flames being visible. Then I head back up to the first bell and talk to Oswald, and purchase the Valka talisman. Valk is the goddess of sin, so this is the closest thing to what I would call an evil talisman. Now for spells, we'll need to talk to Petrus to purchase the Force, as in the Miracle, not the Star Wars move, to replicate Quelaag's explosion attack, and finally Fireball or Chaos Fireball for her lava breath attacks. What's that? The fire attacks don't matter? Quelaag's completely immune to fire damage? I should also mention Force doesn't do any physical damage, and its sibling spells are locked away till later, so these spells are completely useless. I hope this doesn't become a reoccurring trend or something. That's called foreshadowing, if anyone's wondering. As for armor, there's not a lot I can do to mimic a monstrous spider half, but in Darkroot Forest is the Easternern's leggings, which doesn't sound like much, but if you want to make it a stretch, the Demon Ruins is a reflection of Quelaag's culture, which is based on the structures of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, which is located in the eastern part of the world. So, it works enough. Also, I've obtained the spider shield from the sewers to wear it on my back as a reference to her spider half as well. So, that's my explanation. As for everything else, I wear no chestplate, same as Quelaag, and to hide my absolute beauty, I shall wear a bag upon my head to hide it from you all. Is it clear it was 3 in the morning when I did all this? Speaking of that, I'd actually give this fight a 7 out of 10. It was fun using the scimitar, and I found that due to me not having much health, or any proper armor equipped, I was actually having to play smart with Quelaag's lingering lava while juggling it with her explosion attacks. It was a lot of fun, truthfully. But now, with the second bell of Awakening rung, it's time to make our way towards the game's halfway point. Upon the highest level of this fortress of OSHA violations is the Iron Golem. Now for the materials we'll need, they are mostly found in this area. First we'll get our weapons and spells, which we start off by purchasing a battle axe from Andre. And for anyone wondering why it's just a regular axe and not a great axe, the Iron Golem's boss weapon, the Golem Axe, is classified as a regular axe and not a great axe. As for spells, we'll talk to Laurentius and purchase the spell Iron Flesh, because it's the Iron Golem. Because, he's made of iron. Get it? Now everything else we will need is found in Sen's Fortress, with me grabbing the Ring of Steel Protection, granting me higher defense. And then jumping this gap at the top level, we can talk to the Crestfallen Merchant and purchase the Steel Set. Now with everything assembled, let's take on this Golem. Besides, my first attempt started off pretty slow. I'm eventually able to get the Golem's health down halfway, until suddenly, in Iron Golem fashion, the Golem knocked me down, causing me to be the one who falls. I'm really living that Mimic life, ain't I? So in attempt 2, I simply picked up where I left off, and to my complete surprise, I caused the golem to fall over. What's surprising is I've never had him fall off the edge right here. He usually just gets stuck, or just clips the hitbox and doesn't fall. So, not to let this be underwhelming, I mimicked the golem once more and fell after him. I give this fight a 7 out of 10. Good fight, I just didn't get the time to enjoy it. Alright, after I fought the gargoyles, I was hoping everyone would be excited for this fight against Erlando's dynamic duo of Ornstein and Smo. So, let's start with me mimicking Ornstein. For armor, I've assembled the Eastern set from Darkroot Garden and the helm of the Silver Knight set found here in Erlando. Now for his moveset, I will be using a lightning-infused spear, or more accurately, the Partisan Spear. A while back, I watched a video by fellow Dark Souls player Lemon from the Backlogs, as he beat Dark Souls with all the spears available. And with it, I learned about the Partisan Spear, and how unlike all the other spears, it came with this wide sweeping attack, which matches Ornstein's attack pattern much better. As I also mentioned, I've infused this spear with lightning damage with the help of the giant blacksmith here in Erlando, because his boss weapon also inflicts it. Finally, to be thorough, I checked in on our favorite Sunlight bro, Solaire, joining his covenant and obtaining Lightning Spear to replicate Ornstein's lightning throw ability. With this, I will be using the regular talisman purchasable from Petrus to cast it. But with Ornstein covered, let's see how Mimic 2 did mimicking Smo. Dear goodness, what have you done? When I told you to mimic Smo, I didn't mean actually execute everyone we know and love. Yeesh, what's wrong with you? Alright, let's quickly cover this. To mimic Smo, first you'll want the roundest armor in all the land, this being the Katarina armor set, which surprisingly you don't get by killing Sigmire, but is purchasable from the Crestfallen merchant back in Sen's Fortress. As for his helm, it's the Sun Helm, worn by Solaire, which can be obtained in a few different ways. As for the weapon being used, there is only one giant looking hammer available to mimic Smo's, that being the Blacksmith Giant Hammer, only obtainable by slaying the giant blacksmith in Erlando. So if you want to be Smo, you have a lot of friends to send to the abyss. With all the preparations complete, I'm excited to introduce you to Ernesto and Smor, the mimics of Erlando. Our approach for the Ornstein and Smo fight was straightforward yet effective. I would square off against Ornstein, while Mimic 2 would handle Smo. This plan eventually fell through due to my low damage towards Ornstein. As for Mimic 2, he was just trying to survive. So on a whim, I made us switch dance partners, and amazingly, I noticed something I never had with Ornstein and Smo. They were meant to easily defeat each other. When looking at their stats, Smo is the weakest to thrust damage and lightning damage, just like my spear. As for Ornstein, his stats are pretty solid, but his poise ain't saving him from getting a beatdown from that giant hammer. And with that, next thing you know, Ornstein falls first, and now leaving Super Smo in his place. With the defeat of Ornstein, some of you must be wondering what I'm going to do about Mimic 2, since there's now only one boss in the arena. And to that, I say nothing. The way I see it, we are here to mimic Ornstein and Smo, and the best way to do that is for both of us to keep fighting. Because since the original Dark Souls came out, these two have been ganking so many of us players for the past 15 years. I simply view this as a moment of divine karma. But with that, Ornstein and Smo have been defeated, and I give this fight a perfect 10 out of 10. Most accurate and fun fight yet. But now with the Lord Vessel acquired, we have no time to rest, for the next boss is quickly upon us. So before we even think about placing the Lord Vessel, I will be needing to take down the 4 kings, so I can gain access to the Dark Wraith Covenant to get more items for later down the line. Now, I'll be upfront, the 4 kings will be the weirdest and most abstract boss I'll be mimicking. I'll be heading down to the Demon Ruins, towards the Ceaseless Discharge boss arena, and pick up the Gold Hem set, before Ceaseless shares his displeasure. Then I'll be heading into Darkroot Basin, slay the Hydra, free Dusk from the Golem, talk to Dusk, reload the area, and boom, obtain the antiquated set for the Dusk Crown. As for weapons and spells, let's start with the obvious. I'll use Soul Spear to replicate their magic projectiles by casting it with the Ulasil Catalyst, purchased from Dusk, along with Emit Force obtainable from Sigurd after helping him in Anarlando. With this, I will be using Velka's Talisman, and it shall represent the King's AoE blast attack. As for their melee weapon, there's nothing in-game even close to what the Kings wield, so I had to greatly improvise. Because I'm going to use a greatsword. So after combing through the list of weapons available, I landed on one that should serve us well. This being a sword many may forget about, the Man Serpent Greatsword. With a 2% drop rate from the Man Serpents, often found in Sen's Fortress or the Archives. It's got enough of an odd look for me to work with it, and I'm not going to get anything better unless I want to try extracting game files. I follow this up by visiting the blacksmith everyone forgets about, Rickard of Vinheim, to upgrade our weapon with magic, due to the king's weapon dealing magic and physical damage. Now before I fight the 4 kings, I need to make a quick detour back to Darkroot Forest to fight Great Greywolf Sif for the Covenant of Artorias. The reason I'm not giving Sif a full section is because all I can do to mimic her is swing around a giant Zweihander, so there's not a lot going on. Sorry Sif, I'm disappointing you. Now that I can do battle with the 4 kings, I immediately have a major damage problem I have to talk about. I'm clearly not doing enough damage to keep up with them, and they are quickly overrunning me. Now my first plan was just to keep upgrading down the magic line to keep strengthening my weapon, but I forgot that the large enchanted ember is locked away in the archives, which is sealed off until I place the Lord Vessel, which I can't place until I defeat the 4 kings. So it's time for me to use plan B. I quickly save Griggs of Vinheim from the lower Undead Burg, and with this he teaches me the sorcery Magic Weapon, which is a spell that applies magic damage to your weapons. So now I grab the extra large ember from New Londo to get my sword to plus 13, and with the spell I can now apply magic damage, recreating my original setup. Now that I can actually fight the kings, my strategy was to simply use the big damage of Soul Spear and emit force to wear them down and then finish them off with my sword. Now I must admit I've never fought the kings without a shield, and it shows pretty badly with how I'm getting tossed around. But eventually, after the worst juggling act of my life, I eventually persevered and defeated them. I give this fight a 7 out of 10. I wish the Mimic could be better, but you have to work with what you got. And as for the fight, I actually had to take the king seriously for once, so good for them. With the battle over with, the immortal serpent Koth appears, and with that I enter Firelink Altar to place the Lord Vessel, opening the rest of the world and allowing me to warp between locations. Let's see where I head to next. Now with my ability to warp from place to place, I'm thinking about taking something chill after dealing with the 4 kings. So let's take on everyone's favorite loaf of bread, Priscilla. Let's get armor out of the way first, because weapons and rings will be much more interesting. By storming my way through the Duke's archives, I can quickly get Seath to throw me into jail. I can then immediately break out and access these cells located above me and find the Maiden set. With this, I'll be pairing it with a returning dust crown that loosely looks like Priscilla's tiny horns. Then for weapons, I head deep down into the bone zone of the catacombs to pick up Priscilla's iconic weapon, the Scythe. Now it's time for me to cover Priscilla's invisibility, and what's interesting is we have 2 options when it comes to disappearing. The first option, and the one I'm using, is to purchase the spell Hidden Body from Dusk, or if you're willing, you can go after the Ring of Fog, which causes the same effect. But to get this ring, you have to either kill 3 invaders as the Forest Covenant, or give Snuggly the Crow a Skull Lantern. Now I do want to add, I got a bit carried away and kind of misremembered how Priscilla's invisibility worked, and also roped in the spells Hush and the Slumbering Dragon Ring to deafen my sounds. So for anyone wondering, that's why you see me using these later. Finally, with the case of Priscilla's Frost Breath attack, which I can mimic with the move Poison Mist, as demonstrated here, but I have to admit I'm going to void this move due to Priscilla's dealing bleed damage, and using poison doesn't sit right with me here. Now for the rating, I'll give this an 8 out of 10. Setting it up was wonderful, and the fight was fun, but it mostly falls short because I just turn invisible and then hit her repeatedly. If anything, my mimic fails completely because I'm wearing shoes. So I have failed all of you. But hey, maybe I'll have better luck trying out to be a full dragon. Alright, finally I'm mimicking the Gaping Dragon, so let's not waste any more time. First, I make my way down the Great Hollow to reach Ash Lake. While I'm dodging the Hydra, I locate the Everlasting Dragon and join the Path of the Dragon. For those of you that are not in the know, by joining this covenant and handing in 10 and then 30 dragon scales, you are given the dragon head and torso, in which by activating them both with no armor equipped, you become a dragon, but with the cost of having no damage resistances equivalent of wearing no armor. Now if you don't want to waste time grinding for days on end to get all 30, just get yourself a friend to drop them for you. Then I return to Shiva of the East and purchase 2 claw weapons, which will be used to mimic the Gaping Dragon's claw attacks. And finally, I return to the Painted World to pick up the pyromancy that's been holding me back from doing this boss, Acid Surge. While not an offensive spell, it will corrode armor and weapon durability, just as the Gaping Dragon's stomach acid attack does. Will this do anything to help me in this fight? No. But I'm overly committed to showing how far my mimicking prowess can go. As for the fight, I give it a 6 out of 10. It was fun using the dragon form, but with no physical defense available, I actually found myself using the big boss arena to my advantage for once. Now I have to admit I messed up with Seath. The armor I used was correct, the crystal armor set found before the first encounter, along with it being paired with the dragon headstone. I had originally planned to build around the crystal sorceries purchased from Big Hat Logan, whose quest I've been progressing in the background throughout all this. My strategy also included the use of a crystal-infused dragon great axe to mimic Seath's moves. However, the best and most preferred spell for this mimicry would have been the White Dragon's Breath, as it literally involves magic crystals very similar to Seath's attacks. At the time, I believed this was locked behind Big Hat Logan's questline until I defeated Seath, so I never considered it an option. While writing this section, I was watching a video by Doomwolf about using only Soul Arrow, and to my surprise, he defeats Big Hat Logan for his staff before Seath's defeat. And then I see it. Logan drops the White Dragon Breath spell. So, me being overly committed to this project, I ventured into New Game Plus, speedrunning the bells, and placing the Lord Vessel, all to get back to this point. All while dragging Big Hat Logan back to the archives to this exact moment. I purchased all of his stock for good measure and then slayed him. And just like in the video, he drops the spell. Now armed with these weapons and spells, I went to the Crystal Caves to mimic Seath properly, using the Crystal Staff to cast White Dragon's Breath, and once again, Velka's Talisman to perform Emit Force, as the boss's AoE. Combining these with the Crystal Armor and Dragon Headstone, my mimicry is complete. I give this a 7 out of 10. I enjoyed using the spell, and I felt the look came out really nice. Alright, let's head back down into Darkroot Garden and swat down everyone's favorite experimental bug, the Moonlight Butterfly. Which may seem weird to mimic, but it comes out really well. First for armor, I find the Chandler set back in the hidden room of the archives, along with the return of the Silver Knight Helm. As for weapons, we continue using the Crystal Staff to cast Soul Arrow along with Valka's Talisman to once again cast Emit Force for the Butterfly's explosion attack. Finally, I head into the lowest parts of the catacombs to find the Bone Wheel Skeletons, which have a 2% drop rate for the Bone Wheel Shield. Now for those of you confused, don't worry, I'm not using the shield, instead it will sit on my back to resemble this ring the butterfly has. Now before I finish this up, I do have an honorable mention to give. Located deep in the lowest parts of the Tomb of the Giants, one can fight the invader, Paladin Leroy, who drops the holy shield known as Sanctus. When equipped, it slowly heals the user, which is very similar enough to the small healing factor the butterfly has when it rests on the bridge. As for the rating, I give it a 6 out of 10. I like how the Mimic came out, it's just not much happens when you're fighting the butterfly. Alright, with having access to the archives and the pendant, I feel it's time to take on the first DLC boss, the Sanctuary Guardian. Luckily, we have most of the items available. First, I returned to the Duke's archives to finally pick up the Fang Boar Helm. And I forgot to mention this, but I let Laurentius loose so I can get the Dingy set, along with combining this with the Maiden set for armor. As for weaponry, we have the regular Talisman using Lightning Spear for the Guardian's lightning attacks, and to mimic its tail, I've picked up the Whip from Blighttown and purchased Poison Resin to give it poison effect. As for my rating, I give this fight a 9 out of 10, mostly due to how the fight came out really well, with the Whip doing good damage and Lightning Spear coming in helpful when needed. Let's move deeper into the DLC. This now of course leads us to Knight Artorias, who is one of the bosses that inspired this whole idea. So let's quickly get into it. First up, we have armor, with me heading into Darkroot Forest to pick up the Elite Knight set, and then I pivot back into Blighttown to retrieve the Crimson set, but mostly for its headpiece, the Mask of the Sealer, due to it having something similar to Artorias' hood. While I'm here, I pick up Power Within to mimic Artorias' buff move, because if he can do it, so can I. As for his weapons and movements, I'll be using the first boss soul weapon of this run, by upgrading a straight sword and using the soul scythe at the giant blacksmith, so he can make the great sword of Artorias. More specifically, the cursed version due to Artorias having fallen to the abyss. With finally, what I see as the proverbial cherry on top of all this, is the Dark Wood Grain Ring, or better yet, known as the Backflip Ring. which is obtained by repaying our good friend Shiva for all he's done, by taking out his ninja bodyguard who drops the backflip ring. Now in order for us to use the Darkwood Grain Ring, a player's equipment load must be 25% or lower. With this said, the ring will allow me to imitate Artorias' acrobatics and backflips much better. So as an additional note, I'll be using Havel's ring, and my stamina will be at level 35 to perform backflips with this weapon and armor weighing me down. Now for rating this fight, I give it a perfect 10 out of 10. This has been my favorite Mimic by far, and being able to backflip away from Artorias is incredibly fun. And there's something about activating Power Within when he also buffs himself. Alright, now that I'm deeper into the DLC, I have access to what I need to take on the Ceaseless Discharge. Here in the sinking town of Oolacile, we can find the Oolacile Resident, an enemy that comes with a 0.5 drop rate for the bloated head. Bet some of y'all weren't aware of that. Or at least I hope so, I'm trying to seem cool here. But with that, I can pair it with the Crimson set in Havel's leggings that can be found in a hidden room at Anor. Here, I can also grab the Dragon's Tooth because it's the most similar to the Ceaseless Discharge's giant limb. Along with us, returning to the Painted World to pick up Fire Surge for his Fire Punch attack that he snipes us with every time we enter the arena. As for the fight, I opted out of doing the Cheese strat. This is when you lure him to the edge of the arena and then you knock him down. It's pretty simple. But here I wanted to outdo the Discharge at its own game, for there can only be one. It was fun to actually fight Ceaseless like this. Granted, he doesn't really do a lot in terms of attacks, he mostly just swings around his large limbs that you can avoid. But after his defeat, I decided to jump off the ledge to properly get my Ceaseless Discharge experience in. I give it a 7 out of 10. Okay, I'm making this quick, because this boss does not deserve my time or effort to mimic it. First, for the armor set, I'm using the Crimson set again, because fire is red, along with the Eastern set helm, because it matches his Waste of Space's ugly face. For weapons, I'm using the large club to mimic how it swings its staff, and Velka's Talisman for Emit Force, for its very creative explosion attack. Hoop-de-doo. I give it a 3 out of 10. I'm never talking about this again. Okay. Moving on to greener pastures, or more orangier lava, I'm just going to say this right now, mimicking the Centipede Demon was one of my favorites to do. Let's start with weapons and spells. For weapons, I'll be dual wielding the Guardian Tails to mimic the Centipede's arms and tail swings. And I mean, they look bug related enough, so that's why I'm going with this. For any wondering, you can get up to 3 of these. 1 from the main boss Guardian, and 2 more from the lesser Guardians that spawn after defeating Artorias. Also, I've decided to apply charcoal pine resin onto the tails to give them a more fiery look. As for spells, the use of any fireballs would be welcome to replicate its fireball attack. But sadly, it does no damage, just like everything else down here, so I'm not even gonna bother. For armor, the Crimson set will return along with Havel's leggings, cause look at the Centipede Demon's legs, those things are built. Finally, the only headpiece I've deemed appropriate for this is the fully matured Egghead. The Egghead is received when these guys located at the start of the Demon Ruins, known as Egg Carriers, do their grab attack and infect you. Then, after 5 minutes of your character scratching their head, the egg will form. After this, the egg will take half your souls until 100,000 souls have been consumed, leading it to mature, giving the player access to a new attack that replaces their kick with this larva bite attack. Which, if you look closely, that's a bug coming out, so I'm keeping up this whole bug theme. As for rating, I give this an 8 out of 10, mostly due to the fact all this was possible. As for the fight, the tail whips did good damage, and oddly enough, every time I did a bite attack, the Centipede Demon would go completely berserk, by stomping everywhere. I found it funny, but didn't feel like pushing my luck and getting stomped to death. One thing I do want to mention is I wish after I slayed the Centipede head that dropped the orange charred ring, is that I had the bright idea to equip it mid-fight, so that way it would have looked really cool fighting it out in the open lava. Maybe I'll leave that up to y'all to fulfill that for me. Now with the Centipede Demon defeated, it's time for everyone's favorite boss, the Bed of Chaos. Yeah, don't cheer too loudly now. I don't have a lot to say for this Mimic, so here we go. Here I'm wearing the bloated head again, and using the gold hem set as negative space. So just visualize my head as the bug that controls the Bed of Chaos. As for weapons and spells, it's the standard case of the Pyromancy Firestorm, purchasable from Quailana, who only appears outside of Quelaag's domain, when your Pyromancy Flame is upgraded to plus 15. As well, the whip shall return, so it can represent the tendrils the bed flings at you to knock you down to holes in the arena. Yeah, there's not much to this fight. As for the fight, I'm not going to really give this a rating because it doesn't feel like a boss fight, it's just a hindrance on a checklist. For notes of interest, I was able to beat the Bed of Chaos in one attempt, so that's cool. And once again, just like everything else, it's immune to fire damage, so I can't even use half the stuff I brought here. Let's just move on. Let us now return to Anor Londo and take on the most loyal of Gwyn's children, Dark Sun Gwendolyn. First, for attire, I'll make my way out of Lost Izalith and pick up the Sunlight Maggot to serve as Gwendolyn's mask. As well, I'll wear a mix of the Antiquated and Maiden set. As for spells, we'll be using the Crystal Staff to cast Homing Soul Mass and Soul Spear to replicate Gwendolyn's magic attacks respectively, which for any wondering, I had purchased these spells from Big Hat Logan earlier. Finally, to replicate his volley of arrows, I've returned to the archives to parkour off this staircase and onto this bookshelf to collect the Avalon, the multi-firing crossbow. Also, mental note, don't forget to grab the Dark Moon Seance Ring from the catacombs to enter the boss arena, like I did. For rating, I give this boss fight a 7 out of 10. Fun items to use, but you can easily just blast Gwendolyn away with your magic. It's time for the hardest boss in the game, Pinwheel. To mimic this impossible challenge, the armor you'll want is found in the Painted World with the Black Cleric set, due to it having the same shine as the Great Pinwheel. Along with talking to Domhall of Zena to purchase a piece of boss armor, the Crown of the Dark Sun, due to it invoking Pinwheel's great shape. Plus, it's also a mask. For weapons, we'll need the best in the business. With a 2% drop rate from the Necromancers in the Catacombs, you can get a Skull Lantern. So I too can shine like Pinwheel. For spells, a Pyromancy Flame to cast Pinwheel's powerful fireballs, and fire Surge for its mighty flamethrower attack. Yes, indeed. For rating, I give this boss fight 100 out of 10. Pinwheel put up the hardest fight yet, as his clones and brilliance would overwhelm me. But with the fight over with, let's see what mask I get.
Hello!
Finally, my early fight with the Four Kings can pay off. To mimic Gravelord NATO, head back to Koth and offer the Dark Wraith Covenant 30 humanity to receive the Dark Set. And with that, we've got our armor put together. With this done, we can now go back into the catacombs and hop into this coffin and get whisked away to a new location. Just to get more items from a Covenant. Yeah, I'm doing some real exciting gameplay, aren't we? Here we have the Gravelord Covenant, where upon our first interaction, we are given the Gravelord's Sword. And when offering 10 Eyes of Death, which can be found either in the Catacombs, or the Tomb of the Giants, or farmed from basilisks in the sewers, you can receive Gravelord Sword Dance and Great Gravelord Sword Dance, miracles that mimic the spell Nito uses. Finally, on our way down through the Tomb of the Giants, we can save Rhea of Thorlund from her hollowed out helpers, which causes her to relocate up into the Undead Church, where we can purchase the miracle Wrath of the Gods, an AoE attack that we will be using for what the Dark Souls wiki calls Nito's Death Wave. I do want to mention I'd rather use Dark Fog, due to it and Nito's Death Wave having the same dark coloring and toxic damage buildup. The thing is though, Nito and his skeletons for that matter don't take toxic damage, so it's of no help to me. For rating, I give this fight a 7 out of 10. The look I got perfectly, and it was fun to use the spells and miracles present. I did find myself just running away over and over from his AoE blast towards the end. Okay, I'm heading back to the Undead Asylum to take on the Stray Demon. For armor, the Eastern Helm has returned to resemble the demon's face, while I've gone and purchased the chainmail set from the male undead merchant because I wanted to wear some armor. As for weapons, it's time to reveal the reason I fought the Demon Fire Sage. It was for the Demon Catalyst it drops. That's because the Fire Sage and the Stray Demon share the same models. This also includes the weapons they wield. Thus, the Demon Catalyst is the same as the Stray Demon's Catalyst. As for the Stray Demon's explosion attack, Wrath of the Gods will cover it, with the use of the Velka's Talisman. For rating this fight, it's a 5 out of 10. The Stray Demon doesn't do much and only serves for giving me a Titanite slab, This fight does go better than the Fire Sage Demon, I will admit. Okay, with all the main game bosses done, it's time to clean up the DLC, starting with the father of it all, Manus. Let's start with the simple part, armor. The Dark Set's arms and leggings will return to play Manus' arms and legs, along with the dingy robe kinda looking like his furry torso. For the headpiece, we'll bother the Ulasil residents once more by targeting the Ulasil sorcerers for their 1% drop rate of the bloated sorcerer head, to better look like Manus. Along with our first weapon, the Ulasil Catalyst, with a 0.5 drop rate also from the sorcerers, to play his staff. I then stop by the Abyss to grab Dark Bead, the shotgun spell. Granted, I can't see it solving all of our problems due to Manus' high magic defense, but we'll see what happens. And finally, we have the Castus, purchasable from Andre the Blacksmith to take the place of Manus' fist. Now I must warn you, this is the one fight I didn't think too far ahead about before doing all of this. To point something out about Manus, he wields his Catalyst in his right hand, and uses his left hand to attack us. So with Dark Bead only having 6 casts and not a lot of damage, I'll be mostly fighting Manus with a Castus in my left hand. And it's only made worse by needing to be extremely up close to him to land hits. It takes roughly a minute just to get through one section of his health bar with only the Castus, meaning I'm gonna be here a while. So let's just start the montage already. As you can see, I fumbled in that last attempt, so what I did was I came back around and quickly finished Manus off again, but saving Dark Bead for the very end. That was the worst thing I've ever done, and I'll never do anything like this again. For a rating, I give this a 7 out of 10. I still greatly love how the Mimic came out, and not to sound misogynistic, I actually began to enjoy the fight after a few attempts. Let's just get out of this hole already. I think Dusk can see herself out. By the technicality of my rules, I could ignore Calamite when he's still flying around, because he lacks a boss health bar. But I can't joke around forever, so let's do this. For Mimicking Calamite, let's start with the obvious, with the use of the dragon head and torso to become a dragon once more. As for Calamite's moves, he breathes black flames and swipes and thrashes, meaning the return use of the dual claws, and waiting for us deeper in the abyss is the black flame pyromancy. And that's it. That's all I can do for Calamite. He does have his Mark of Calamity psychic attack, but that move debuffs the player, and I can't see Power Within taking on this role. So to clarify, I'm basically naked and using a black flame spell against the one dragon with 900 fire resistance. Oh boy. For rating this boss, I give it a 6 out of 10, mostly for the same reasons as Manus. A challenging fight that went a lot better, all things considered, but there was a lack of moves I can mimic, hence the lower rating. Let's move on and get to the ending. Alright, here we are. The end of the line with Lord Gwyn. First, for armor, the only thing befitting the Lord of Sunlight is the Sunlight armor that Deer Solaire bears, along with a Sunlight maggot taking the place of his crown. As for weapons, I'll be using the Greatsword that's classified as an Ultra Greatsword, and to get that fiery glow, I can apply charcoal resin, making my sword look better than the official Boss Soul weapon, all while wielding it in one hand, just like him. For anyone asking me to use Sunlight Spear, please go sit back down, you're spoiling Dark Souls 3. As for the fight, I give this an 8 out of 10. I found myself getting tossed around a lot by Gwyn. Granted, I've never fought him without the ability to parry, so that shows clearly. But after a few bouts, I eventually realized that while Gwyn wields his sword with one hand, he swings it with both hands. Being able to use two hands has finally allowed me to beat him, and claim the title as Lord of Cinder. And now standing here is Lord Gwyn. I too should link the flame as he did. But I am better than a lord. I am a mimic, a godlike deity. And I see a world where mimics shall be the most powerful out there. Because in the end, a mimic doesn't inherit power, it takes it. And with that, every boss in Dark Souls has been defeated through mimicry. Some builds worked out better than others, but each one showed how differently these bosses are designed compared to the player. Not everything translated perfectly, but getting as close as possible was the goal. Turns out becoming the boss isn't what makes it difficult. It's realizing you never quite can. I want to thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe or check out more of my videos. And more importantly, have a great day.